Rallying. Man and machine versus extreme climates, challenging the very limits of motorsport. A lump of fire and metal exploding across the countryside. A complex series of steering, throttle and brake inputs, a veritable dance upon the pedals to keep from tumbling out of control in one of motorsport's most dangerous disciplines.
Crest 80. Caution crest, turn left 4 deceptive, 60 through dip. And right 6 over crest. Dip, and middle over long crest, into left 6, into right 5 over crest, jump 40.
This is Dirt Rally. A game that attempts to simulate the experience of hurling an engine and a set of wheels that are barely ever going in a straight line through mud, dirt, gravel, dust, asphalt, snow and ice, and managing to capture that adrenaline beautifully. This is a game that I've put over 200 hours into, on controller by the way, but it would be much better on a steering wheel if you've got one, and continue to not only enjoy it, but be humbled by it whenever I make a mistake. And you will make mistakes. No rally stage ever goes perfectly, and nothing is more certain than the idea that you're going to crash. So when your co-driver says don't cut, don't test him, he knows what he's talking about. And do like, comment, subscribe. Let's start in the 1960s. The Rolling Stones are just about making a name for themselves. There's only been a handful of James Bond movies, and the audio cassette was first invented. The front-wheel drive Mini Cooper S was launched and popularised for its lightweight design, allowing for a level of nimbleness in harsh conditions. Famously, it made its way to victory around the tight, twisty and icy roads of Monte Carlo in 1964, 65 and 67. However, the iconic British car also caught the eye of Renault, who decided that they wanted to try their hand at this up-and-coming motorsport. Bankrolling a then small sports car manufacturer by the name of Alpine, they were able to transform their A110 Coupe into a fierce competitor. As you can see, the car has a long wheelbase and rear-wheel drive, totally the opposite feeling of that Mini Cooper S, and yet manages to convincingly tackle those same conditions with confidence. There's something about the power going to the rear of the car that makes more sense to me. That throttle control alone can push you around a tight corner rather than pulling you through with the front-wheel drive car, which makes it feel easier to control in some respects. The interior is very much 1960s French. Huge circular panels in the dash, with all the bells and whistles and comfortable things that you would expect to find of the era that is clearly designed for style over substance, and even a speedometer reaching the vast heights of 240 kilometers per hour, which is rather optimistic even in a straight line. Outside you can feel the suspension compressing at each and every hairpin and bump around this Greek gravel. Calling the Alpine a bit of a boat might be quite rude, but I don't think it's all that far off with the way it slows down and the body rolls oh so much, both an advantage for the keen Scandinavian flick technique and a slow wallowing mush if you get it wrong. The engine being mounted at the rear does indeed help to keep some grip on those driving tyres, keeping the power delivery where it needs to be, but it's tough to keep the speed up when the looming threat of barreling down what feels like Mount Olympus on the side here is constant. I'm reminded constantly that rallying is a dangerous sport, and at least in a video game the adrenaline stays high and keeps it being fun. Anyone doing this in real life is an absolute incredible human being. As the 1970s rolled around, the Alpine managed to win 6 events all in 1973, including Monte Carlo despite its lengthy size. By this point, rally had also been officially picked up by the FIA and the World Rally Championship was formed. The times were changing and another manufacturer had their eyes on the sport. While the Mark II Ford Escort was also making waves on the scene and continues to be one of the most popular rally cars as of today, a little Italian company called Lancia had something else up their sleeves. The Stratos. A beautiful wedge-shaped thing, but not to be enjoyed at the speed that you would cheese. The first car ever designed specifically for rallying. Boasting a V6 Ferrari engine mounted in the middle of the chassis, this iconic vehicle shot its way to success in the WRC for 3 years in a row, along with many other event victories reaching into the 1980s. This is by far one of my favourites to drive in the game. Taking it for a spin around the extremely tight and slippery roads of Monte Carlo is an absolute joy, but pushing just a little too far can be a difficult temptation to fight, and will often leave you with more than just a damaged ego. The ice and level of grip can change significantly during the course of even just one stage, meaning you'll find yourself adapting quickly to how the car feels from corner to corner, or ending up planted inside of a crash barrier, or worse, tumbling off of the mountain. That mid-engine feeling that you get really does change the game. Suddenly, this machine comes into its own when you get comfortable with how easily it can simply just rotate around its centre of mass. It's absolutely no wonder that the Lancia team found so much success with it. But progress would not stop there. In 1980, a group of engineers over at Audi in Germany managed to crack the idea of pushing power to all four wheels at the same time. Front or rear wheel drive was so last decade. This revolution in drivetrain design would change motoring forever. Add in a turbocharged 2.1 litre 5-cylinder engine to their family saloon car, and the Audi Quattro was born. Over 500 horsepower was squeezed into this engine, and in return it became an absolute monster. But for the first time ever, was able to demonstrate that this power could be used during corners, as well as during the straights. With all four wheels delivering and maintaining a much higher level of grip to the road surface, Audi were able to leave everyone else in the dust, quite literally in most cases, as they made incredible gains in time across the extremely twisty rally stages. The snowy rallies of Sweden were demonstrable proof of that concept, sliding gracefully around the icy surfaces with ease and showing the rest of the competition that going fast in just a straight line was only some of the battle. The Quattro feels at home under these conditions, just eating up the surface and allowing for a level of control that was never before possible. Even with a massive, heavy engine sitting right over the front axle causing more understeer than a shopping trolley, it just doesn't matter when you're able to maintain that traction through the corners, easily rotate the vehicle to point in the right direction, and then unleash that turbocharger out of the exit. It is a complete joy to drive this machine, and car nuts everywhere will recognise the engine sound above so many others. It's simply a legendary vehicle. Group B rules and regulations were then formed, which led many manufacturers to develop cars even further removed from production models, and it spawned a generation of supercars. These were increasingly pushing the limits of the sport and what they could get away with in the pursuit of speed and efficiency. The Peugeot 205 T16 being incredibly nimble with its short wheelbase and reportedly ease of control through the corners, yet having one of the most insane turbochargers ever implemented. Once it kicked in, this thing would go from fast to light speed before you could check your underwear. Group B cars were developed with extremely lightweight fiberglass bodies, barely tacked onto the chassis, barely affording any protection at all to the drivers, who were in control of an extreme, never before seen amount of power. And the game does not hold your hand with these things, nor does it hold back. During the era, Lancia was still in the runnings as well, earlier with their rear-wheel drive 037, later replaced by the four-wheel drive Delta S4. Both of these cars would use a supercharger, with the Delta utilising both a super and a turbocharger for their forced induction. But the 037 being the last of the great rear-wheel drives makes it another one of my favourites. In real life, Lancia fiddled and fumbled with all sorts of rules to somehow get it not only to work, but to even win a Constructors' Championship during the four-wheel drive supremacy. These cars never truly feel like you're in control of them, which makes them incredibly fun to take around a stage in Dirt Rally. In real life, one of the drivers at the time, Walter Roll, was quoted as saying, "If I wanted to fly, I would have been a pilot," when he refused to take part in the Finnish rally, famous for featuring many jumps. These were truly insane machines. Even in the relatively tame stages around the airfields of Germany, on regular tarmac, and even with my 200 hours of experience, nothing can help me from still making mistakes. Oh, cock. Sadly, these also happened in real life. In 1986, the Tour de Corse rally was suspended after a horrendous crash, which resulted in the death of the Lancia Delta S4 driver Henri Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cresto. Safety regulations became paramount in the wake of such a tragedy, and Rally Group A was formed. These newer cars were much more limited and restricted in power and weight, requiring much more in the way of preventative measures and risk lowering for everyone involved. Safety was top priority at this point. Lancia would be the first team to adapt to these new regulations, producing the Lancia Delta HF and winning the Manufacturers' Championship for 6 years in a row, 1987 to 1992. The 90s would also see the appearance and rise of Colin McRae in the Subaru Impreza, but also Ford would still maintain a presence in the sport, particularly with the Escort RS Cosworth, or the Cozze. Notably, this was the first rally car designed to produce downforce at both the front and the rear, adding a lot of stability to both ends of the car and aiding in those high-speed turns. This is rather noticeable in Finland, where the car stays much more stable while flying spectacularly through the air. The Cosworth is surprisingly easy to drive, feeling smooth and even somewhat sensible, but of course not ever really. During the Group A era, the Cozze managed to take 10 WRC rally wins from 93 to 97, but never truly managed to stand out against the other players in the sport, particularly against Tommy Mäkinen in his Evo or McRae in his Impreza. But by this point, gone were the days of rear-wheel drive and turbo lag. These were truly a relic of the past. The 2000s were dominated by French manufacturers Citroën and Peugeot, winning a number of manufacturers and driver titles between them. Subaru, while having Richard Burns at the wheel, would only take one win in 2001, and again in 2003 with Petter Solberg, only to pull out of the sport in 2008 due to apparent economic downturn. Which was a great shame, because the 2001 Impreza is a car that encapsulates rally in my mind. When someone mentions the motorsport, this is the car that I immediately envision. Beautiful blue metal flake paint with its quintessential yellow livery, its long wheelbase, and shockingly planted look to it. I love this car, and it's found its way into so many other video games because I'm clearly not the only person who does. It's fast, it's responsive, it's improved no end on the 95 design that took McRae to so many wins, and it just chews through the rugged terrain of the muddy Welsh stages. If you were to ask me to show you one car and one stage in this game, it would be the 01 Impreza in Wales at Sweet Lamb. Every piece of knowledge about rally technique comes together to form a perfect harmony between man and machine, and it's right on the edge of that time when the cars still needed quite a bit of wrestling to keep under control, but not too far in that it's as extremely on edge as, say, the Group B era. There's jumps, there's hairpins to handbrake around, there's cambered corners to throw you in and out if you don't get it quite right, weight transfer opportunities, Scandinavian flick points, left foot braking, extreme speed, gloriously smooth and challenging bumpy sections. This is what rallying is all about, that coming together of everything, those extreme hardships eventually beaten, and at the end, not just a checkered flag or a victory, but a performance. I consider rallying to be incredible, maybe even an art form in some respects, and Dirt Rally manages to capture the feeling of throwing a car around a dangerous track of hardly drivable road superbly. I'm MagicalMike, and I'm quids in with this game. Cheers.